Welcome to this special edition of the World Trade Webcast. I'm Greg Sandler, president of ThinkGlobal.com, the B2B network for global trade leads. Today on the World Trade Webcast, we're focusing on Enterprise Florida, the principal economic development organization for the state of Florida. Our guest is Manny Mencia, Senior Vice President for International Trade and Development at Enterprise Florida, the state's primary entity for trade, export development, and foreign direct investment, supporting more than 60,000 Florida exporters. Manny, welcome to the World Trade Webcast.
Pleasure being here with you today.
Well, we're really happy to have you here. And before we get started with questions, I want to provide some context for our viewers. As the world's principal commercial gateway to Latin America and Caribbean markets, Florida is a leading global trade hub. Goods worth more than $158 billion flowed through Florida's airports and seaports in 2013. Florida is also a major producer and exporter of goods, which reached over $60 billion in 2013. So to get started, Manny, can you give us an overview of Enterprise Florida's mandate when it comes to export promotion and international trade development?
Of course, international business is arguably more important to Florida than I would think almost any state in the United States. Our economy today is something like 18% dependent on international business. And when you look at the job impact of international business in Florida, depending the sources that you check, anywhere between 1 million and 2 million Floridians live directly or indirectly from international business. So the state has put a lot of emphasis on this program and has charged Enterprise Florida with all aspects of export promotion on behalf of the state, with a proactive assistance to exporters to help them generate sales, identify new markets and new clients around the world, and also the attraction of foreign direct investment from throughout the world. Finally, I guess I should say that Enterprise Florida is a public-private partnership. We are actually the first state of the United States that to privatize its old Department of Commerce and create this model for economic development, which we like to think combines the resources of government with the energy and initiative of the private sector.
Excellent. Well, clearly Florida has been very proactive when it comes to export trade development. So can you elaborate a bit more, Manny, on the advantages of Florida as an international business center, both for Florida exporters and U.S. exporters in general?
Certainly, Greg. Let's begin by saying that geographically, Florida is ideally positioned to be a major international business center. If you look at our position at the epicenter of the Western Hemisphere, the state is ideally positioned for both north, south, east, west trade. Our infrastructure, 14 deep water ports, 11 international airports. I think it's as good as any state's. Four of our seaports, Port of Miami, Port Everglades, Jacksonville, the Port of Tampa, rank among the top ports in the eastern seaboard and southeast of the United States. And of course, our international airport infrastructure is second to none. Miami International Airport is the #1 airport for international freight in the United States. It's also #2 in international passenger with tremendous connectivity. Orlando International Airport is one of the fastest growing in the world. So from the physical infrastructure, I like to think that we're extremely competitive and well positioned. But more important, I think, is the soft infrastructure, the human infrastructure. And Florida enjoys one of the largest concentration of knowledge-based service providers, of transportation and logistic companies, of specialized companies on sectors like finance, for example. We have the second largest international banking sector in the United States after New York. We have the third largest concentration of logistics companies in the US. We have, I would think, the largest concentration of experts if the orientation to the market of the Americas is taken into consideration. So if you're interested in doing business in Latin America, I don't think there's a place that you could be better positioned than the state of Florida. Today, we handle roughly 35% of U.S. exports to the region, with the exception of Mexico, about a third of the total trade in the region, and it's more than that. Without question, Florida is a place where Latin American companies prefer to go, to not only to buy and sell and to access services, but also for training, for new products and for new ideas. And by the way, I would like to also say that Florida is increasingly also becoming a major gateway to other parts of the world. The expansion of the Panama Canal should have a tremendous impact on Florida's ability to expand trade with Asia, for example. We're already seeing enormous interest from companies throughout the world that want a position in Florida to do business worldwide. Another advantage that Florida has is our cultural affinity with the Americas and our multilingual population. One fact that I always like to point out is more than 4 million Floridians, that's 20% of our population, speak a first language other than English. So our cultural affinity, of course, with Latin America, but increasingly with Europe, with Asia, and other parts of the world is a tremendous advantage.
Excellent. And how does that both the demographic diversity as well as that very impressive infrastructure help Florida companies when it comes to finding the kind of resources they need within the state in order to be successful with exporting?
Well, it provides an excellent platform for doing business. As you know, each nation where you do business is slightly different. And our workforce, I like to think, is second to none. In fact, our workforce training programs have ranked in recent years among the very top in our country. So here you can find the human infrastructure that you need to do business around the world. We have a state that has a very, very friendly government for business. No personal income tax, low corporate taxes, and a whole variety of incentives that make Florida, a very desirable place to do business.
Excellent. And for those viewers that are interested in learning about some of those advantages, certainly the Enterprise Florida website is a good resource for that. Can you talk a little bit more, Manny, about what some of the key industry sectors are in Florida in terms of exporting, particularly for those companies that might be thinking that they could gain some advantages by being part of industry clusters that are particularly focused on international markets?
Well, high technology. A lot of people, obviously, when people first think about Florida, the first thing you think about is tourism and beaches and Disney and our tourism infrastructure, which, by the way, it's wonderful. Over 95 million tourists came to Florida last year. That's a tremendous advantage in terms of being able to showcase our state to foreign companies and foreign clients and so on and so forth. But Florida is also one of the leading high technology centers of our country. We are the third largest exporter of high technology in the United States. And when you look at some of our clusters, for example, aviation, aerospace, Florida has the second largest aviation aerospace sector in the United States. And it is our expectation that we will surpass California as the number one state in the union for aviation manufacturing, for example. The same is true in the life sciences sectors. Florida has a huge um, medical and biotech and medical devices industry in our state. And of course, it's also a leading state for medical tourism. IT, we have one of the fastest growing IT sectors in the United States. And last but not least, and something this is important to exporters, we're a huge exporter of services, particularly knowledge-based services. Our estimate is that our state exported over $33 billion in services last year. A significant amount of that to the nations of the Americas, but also to other parts of the world. So, and of course, high technology are not the only sectors that are large in Florida. Florida, of course, is a great exporter of agriculture and related industries, as well as across the board of the transportation sector. So I like to think that Florida has a lot to offer as a supplier and also as a market. Remember, Florida has an enormous economy. We are one of the largest economies in the U.S., an economy that surpassed $800 billion in 2014. That means that if we were a nation state, we would have roughly the 18th largest economy in the world, a little larger than the Netherlands, a little smaller than Turkey. So it's a state with a tremendous diversity, tremendous breadth of industries and sectors. For example, manufacturing, while Florida is not known as a manufacturing state, when it comes to exporting, in many ways, we're the national champion. From the perspective that we don't export the most dollar value wise, of course, but we are the largest exporter in our country on a percentage basis, according to the National Association of Manufacturers. 49% of what Florida manufactures, it's exported, compared to roughly 20% for the U.S. as a whole.
It's extraordinary how strong the Florida economy is and how important that exporting is to that economy. And I think you've also touched on the reason that Florida is also a leader in attracting foreign direct investment, ranking 5th among all the U.S. states in employment by majority foreign-owned firms. So let's talk for a minute about how important foreign direct investment is to the state and who some of the most significant companies are with a presence in Florida.
Okay, well, foreign direct investment is tremendously important to us as this international business, or as a part of international business. Roughly 250,000 Floridians are employed by foreign companies in the state. And I think the most important fact there is that these companies, foreign companies in Florida, pay 30% higher than the average wages of the state. So foreign investment, it's very attractive to us in terms of bringing to our state the type of jobs that we want to create. Now, over 2,500 foreign companies that we have identified are established in the state. That, by the way, in my estimation, is it underestimates the actual impact of foreign direct investment. For example, a significant amount of our foreign investment comes from Latin America. Although the European Union is far and away our largest investor, Canada is also an extremely large investor. But those Latin American companies, going back to that, oftentimes establish in Florida as a Florida company rather than as a subsidiary of their companies back home. and those, particularly those companies that are privately held, tend to fly under the radar screen. So Latin American investment in Florida is very, very undercounted. We have, well, a plethora of the most familiar names in the world having a presence in the state of Florida. I believe Siemens remains the largest foreign employer in our state, but we have companies from all over the world successfully doing business in Florida. Running the gamut from household names like Mitsubishi and Smith Industries and Bombardier, and one company that is very important to us, Embraer, from Brazil. Embraer is in the process of manufacturing 3 different types of aircrafts in the state of Florida. This is particularly important because when they first started assembling their corporate jets in Melbourne, Florida, they became the first foreign company ever to assemble airframes in our country. So it's become a tremendous, how would you say, a tremendous selling tool for us when we talk to other aviation aerospace companies from around the world. Another company that comes to mind as a very interesting investor, Land Airlines. Land Cargo has its world headquarters in Miami. And it's the largest foreign direct investment employer in our state. But companies, the time is not going to allow us to go to every one of the household names, but practically everybody that you can think of is here. One that comes to mind just announced an enormous expansion in terms of investment is Swire, the Hong Kong-based real estate company, which is one of the largest developers in Florida, particularly in South Florida.
Excellent. So whether it's a company that's looking to locate in Florida from overseas, a company that's looking to locate in Florida from the U.S., or a company that just wants to avail themselves of assistance from Enterprise Florida, what's the best way for those companies and individuals to access Enterprise Florida resources?
Well, for a first look, it's a good idea to go to our website, www.eflorida.com. But also, you can contact us directly in our offices in Florida or through the 15 offices that we maintain around the world. We maintain offices in most of the major trading and investment partners of our state and even of our country. And our foreign offices are a very good way for companies from overseas to come in contact with us. For U.S. companies or companies that want to export, our headquarter location in Miami is a good way to start. Our international trade programs have received recognition throughout the United States and in many ways throughout the world. Not only have we won every U.S. award, the E Award, the E Star, the Gold Award as the best state for export promotion, but very recently, for example, Brookings Institution did an analysis of state trade programs and the impact, and ranked Florida as one of the 3 premier export programs in the nation, as one of the most sophisticated and best. I like to think that we have the ability, although we specialize on helping small and mid-sized companies, that we have the ability to support any company of any size in any location in our state. Another advantage that we have is that from very early on, we decided to take advantage of the technology advances, and rather than deploy our entire U.S.-based staff in one city, as it's often the case with state trade development agencies. I'm deployed in 6 separate cities in Florida, and each one of those offices has a territory that they're responsible for. They all report to me, of course, but what it essentially means is that we are able to assist a company of any size in any part of the state at any level of sophistication in the export process. We have products for everybody, from the startup that's never exported or is an infrequent exporter, to get them into the game, to assisting experienced companies or companies have been exporting for years to either further increase their exports or, even better, identify new markets. Export diversification has become the #1 priority of our organization. As you know, most small, mid-sized companies do business in very limited markets, and that oftentimes leaves them exposed to regional and local downturns in their client market. So one major emphasis in our programs is helping Florida companies, if they export to 1 or 2 markets, find the 3rd and the 4th or the 5th, and more important, to diversify regionally where they're doing business.
Excellent. Manny, this has been a terrific overview of Enterprise Florida. And again, for our viewers interested in Enterprise Florida's programs and services, you can go to the Enterprise Florida website. The URL is on the screen behind me. And our guest today has been Manny Mencia, Senior Vice President for International Trade and Development at Enterprise Florida. Manny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Greg, for having me.
Well, it's been terrific. And for our latest schedule of upcoming episodes, subscribe to us with any of the links below and bookmark this page. All of our previous webcasts can be found at thinkglobal.com/webcast. And thanks for watching.